For the next 30 seconds, good morning.
Hey guys.
Good morning. I am so glad to see you all here for our last high noon of 2024. So bravo, we've had a fantastic lineup this whole year, and I will tell you that we are already making plans for 2025. We've got some really fantastic themes and programs kind of in line, so keep track for 2025 as well. I will also encourage you guys, we do have one more event for the Western Heritage Center. This is our last high noon, but it is not our last event for 2025. On December 7th, from 10 until 2, we are hosting our annual Holiday Play-A-Palooza. It is a free family event. We have Santa Claus, we have face painters, we have traditional games, we have snacks, we have a whole slew of really exciting, fun, free activities. So you are welcome to come as you are, but you're also welcome to grab a small child, a small person, and bring them with you. Actually, I think some of the most popular photographs with Santa do not have kids in them. I think they tend to be adult groups that come to get their photos taken with Santa during that event. So that is December 2nd from 10 until 2. Completely free. Mark your calendars, that'll be great. So for today's program, we're really incredibly excited. One of our own is going to present his research with you. Kevin has been working on these properties for, I'm going to say years, because many of them—
27 years.
I was going to say, because many of them go all the way back to the very beginnings of the North Elevation District Plan. And so looking at the details, really kind of digging and sussing out the reality of the architect Chandler Cohagen. But for Kevin, I mean, many of you have seen his face around. At least if you're familiar with us at all, you've seen his face around. Kevin's been our executive director since 2017, but you may not know that he began work here at the Western Heritage Center as the community historian in 1997. So
Last century.
He's forgotten more about the Western Heritage Center than I think I'll ever know. He's a native of New Jersey, but he has lived in Montana for almost 40 years, working as a historian, archaeologist, cultural anthropologist, scriptwriter, and museum administrator. His undergraduate degree is from Montana State University in Bozeman.
Go Cats.
Yeah. You can say
That's
that.
on the script.
It is here. I'm not reading that.
Okay.
Kevin can absolutely say that. And his master's degree is in applied anthropology from the Northern Arizona University. He was a recipient of the 2011 Billings Chamber of Commerce Tourism Excellence Award and the recipient of the 2022 Yellowstone Historic Preservation Board Award for his historic preservation efforts in Yellowstone County. So ladies and gentlemen, please join me in welcoming Kevin as he shares his incredible, incredible research.
All right, great. Thank you so much. Well, this will be interesting for me. This is the first time presenting this. And so I actually have to use a script, which is very unusual. And I'm going to be talking, of course, about the architect Chandler Cohagen from Billings, who is really better known for his dozens of schools, churches, businesses, but I am going to focus on his homes, which sometimes he was chagrined himself about building homes because so many people have so many wants and desires. But so I will provide some examples of some of his commercial works that we are probably all familiar with, and I've also used those as a way to get us to the homes themselves. His thinking on his business properties kind of follows in line with his properties of the homes that we're going to be talking about in the Pioneer Park and McKinley School neighborhood. So this research stems from support that we received from the Montana State Historic Preservation Office and support from the local Yellowstone Historic Preservation Board. As Lauren mentioned, we worked on the North Elevation project for about 7 years. We actually created the McKinley School National Register nomination also. So this is just kind of building on that whole northwest section of the city itself. I also want to thank Yellowstone County and its residents, all of you, because we are fortunate to receive an annual mill levy, which really helps pay for our staff. It enables us the opportunity to do original research, get into our community. We're very excited that this year we're presenting over 186 programs in Billings, and this is one. So not all of them require so much research for years, but we're happy to be out at the schools, at public events, at conferences, and at 10 of the different senior centers here in Billings. And based on this research, we're also in the process of going to create a printed brochure for a walking tour in the neighborhood itself. We'll be hosting walking tours in May of next year during Historic Preservation Month. And as this program will be added to our roster of programs that we can offer to the community. So maybe there's the Billings Architectural Association might invite us. Those are different groups that we tend to meet with. So I'm going to show you a lot of architectural drawings, because another beautiful thing about this project is that the Western Heritage Center houses many of the Chandler Cohagen architectural drawings. So, and it's really quite a process. He would hire somebody would hire him, and like a Mr. Lyle, and beautiful drawings, and then we have to take the drawings and figure out where Mr. Lyle's house is. They didn't have property addresses on them, so it's this little game of investigation that required. So. Uh-oh. It goes. Okay, now they're going to start skipping ahead, right? All right, so the son of a building contractor from Iowa, Chandler Cohagen's family left Iowa after Chandler graduated from high school in 1907. They moved to Montana in a decade of remarkable growth in Billings. And according to the 1912 City Directory of Billings, Chandler Cohagen worked as a draftsman for the architect Curtis C. Omi, who designed Broadwater School. Cohagen attended the University of Michigan, where he received a degree in architecture. Moving back to Montana, he first worked with Angus McIver and Walter Marshall in Great Falls, then with McIver and Cohagen. They actually opened up an office here in Billings in 1916, and they worked together into the 1930s. He met his wife Flora Brown here in Billings, and they resided in Billings until the 1950s, when she passed away, and he resided until the year 1985. So indicative of Cohagen's character as an architect is a framed motto which greeted every visitor into his office. The quote was from John Ruskin's, and it says, quote, "When we build, let us think that we build forever." It was about creating a public perspective on his art, in some ways his commercial projects, and also his homes. So this is one of his commercial properties. I don't know if you recognize this particular building, but it's on 1st Avenue North and 33rd, and it actually doesn't have the tower anymore. The tower must have come down about 4 or 5 years ago. This is the Percy Goen building at 3301 1st Avenue North. Cohagen at the time reflected on his particular style of design in 1926. He said he borrowed from many elements. He wanted the face of commercial buildings in the central business corridor to fit with the bordering residential neighborhoods. He mixed elements of classical Roman and Greek with Gothic motifs, along with English Tudor, and would later incorporate English and Spanish and Mission Revival in his home designs, and we'll visit some of those. He was actually, what's really fun about this project is I've learned a lot about the builders who are never given credit. You know, the architect gets but he really emphasized who he worked with. For example, on this project, he hired contractor Frank Jacoby and Sons, and that'll also come up when we talk about his home. Terrazzo floors done by Frank Punicelli of Billings, brickwork by George Propsom, and stucco plastering by Frank Evangelicist for the Goen project. Goen project was the first building in Billings with modern gas heating and a fan blast system in town. At each area of the building could be controlled for its heat. So this is the Mulvaney Automobile Building, which he described as modern America. It was right basically across from the post office. He said it featured items that never have been introduced in construction in Montana. Maybe that's how every architect talks. I don't know. Randy's back there. He could verify. So, in preparing a design for this new building, Cohagen wanted to express on the exterior what is to be found within the building. And at the same time, through considerable study was given so that the Mulvaney building would harmonize with the more classical Renaissance revival design of the post office downtown, which was across the street. He wanted to express the modernism of an active auto industry and yet harmonize the architecture of the federal building. And with this in mind, he selected brick as the medium, a color that would fit the surroundings with a polished granite base. This structure was torn down in 1979 during the urban renewal period. And then across the street, at about the same time, was the construction of the Sheridan Hotel by Harrison Fagg, which I'll also talk about. A lot of these people, Jacoby and Fagg, these are the homes I'm also talking about. There seemed to be this kind of network of friends, and obviously they leaned on each other in their work. So Cohagen was the architect, along with Frank Jacoby and Sons, for this commercial project on 2nd Avenue North. He said about this property, the act of building wisely embodies the philosophy of humans or people's ideals. It is a complete index of the civilization of each age. He was a big thinker, right? He's seeing these properties as really substantial pieces of our future and our history. And so the Heaton building, actually occupied by Piggly Wiggly. I don't know if that's I don't think we have any more Piggly Wigglies in Montana, do we? Siegel's Market, the second floor had classroom space for the early Eastern Montana College and also the offices of McIver and Cohagen. One of his most well-known projects here, the Normal School, now MSU Billings, actually opened in 1927 when the new administrative building was designed by Angus McIver and Chandler Cohagen. He referred to it as modern Gothic structure. It was the first structure of what was then Eastern Montana Normal School. It housed everything: the administrative offices, classrooms, library, and even a museum. The third floor housed art, music, and science departments. The tower room on the fourth floor included the band and choral music performance venues. Until this time, the school had actually been kind of, in all these other buildings. For example, they had classes here. They had classes at McKinley School, at Washington School. So this kind of unified the campus in the 1930s. Cohagen also did a lot of renovations for several of these historic downtown properties. The Elks Building, or Commercial Club, which is across the street from the Yellowstone County Courthouse. The Oliver Building, which is located trackside on Montana Ave. The Yagan Block on Minnesota Avenue. And the downtown Federal Post Office in the 1930s. You can see the renovations, what he added to this particular building without sacrificing the elements that made it such an attractive building. So. Another well-known building here in downtown Billings. Cohagen was involved twice with the modernization of the downtown YMCA building. He and several investors purchased the property for $70,000 in 1937, which is about $1.5 million adjusted for inflation. The building was built using Columbus sandstone, that's Columbus, Montana. Cohagen's records indicate he maintained the integrity of the original structure, including the 1907 running track. Okay, so who went into this building and went to Wendy's for lunch? Do you remember that little deal? That was the running track for the YMCA. I always found it ironic because I was always up there eating like a double burger. It didn't work out for me, so. So importantly, Cohagen was also president of the YMCA for several decades, and I'll talk at the end about that. He also later designed the Billings Family YMCA at 402 North 32nd. That's still here with us. Another big project is the Billings City Hall, created by what I call an all-star team of architects from Billings in 1940. John Gustav Link. Link, actually, if you think about amazing buildings in Billings, like St. Pat's Church and the beautiful Babcock and things like that. Those are Link projects. McKinley School is a John Gustav Link. So he's kind of a little earlier than Cohagen. Cohagen's coming in later. So on the project, the all-star team was John Gustav Link, Ralph Cushing, and Everett Terrell, which becomes CTA, and Chandler Cohagen. So in 1940, the building was designed for operation with a minimum of effort, for economy of maintenance, and for beauty of appearance. So it's kind of this balancing act between form and function. Large filing spaces and work vaults were provided for each department. The cost of the building at 1940 was $215,000, which would be about $4.8 million today. So as I mentioned, it's fun that these three architects who kind of overlap on a particular single project. So another well-known Cohagen project, I do love this photo from 1958, showing the old architecture of the town, you know, when it was all about form, what the public would see as they walk by in the streets, versus more of a functional approach, making sure you had enough space for your employees, things like that. So they obviously did the courthouse on the left side there. The straight lines, regular patterns, and smooth textures of Cohagen's Yellowstone County Courthouse contrast with the 1904 architectural style of C.E. Bell of Helena's design courthouse. And as I said, the trend was to get more space for your employees and to have the building more functional, but not necessarily as ornate. And then my last slide on his commercial work, this is the crazy thing about doing a program. I woke up at 4 in the morning this morning and said, there's no way he did 1,000 schools. I started doing the math. It's not possible. So the headline in the Gazette doesn't seem practical. But he was very known. He was known for his school designs, for his churches, and as I said, other commercial properties. I'll just mention a couple of them here. Orchard School in Billings, 1918. The Billings Deaconess Hospital, Bighorn Creamery in Hardin, the Rosebud Deaconess Hospital in Forsyth, Park County High in Powell, Wyoming, the Cody High in Cody, Wyoming. Sydney High School in Sydney, Fromberg High School, Eastern Montana College of Science Building, and the First Congregational Church renovations here in town, and the First Christian Church of Billings. So obviously I could do a program just on his commercial work, but for whatever reason I got really excited about learning the fact that he had such an influence in the North Elevation. So when we did the North Elevation project, we got an opportunity to spend about 7 years, hundreds of properties, and each required kind of a little history for itself. So as the Billings population grew from 3,200 residents in 1900 to 15,000 by 1920, the North Elevation Historic District, which is highlighted in the yellow, stretched the city boundaries to the west and northwest. The speedy adoption of the automobile after 1910 led to the expansion of single-family homes and garages in the North Elevation. Promoter Austin North said in 1913, many of the residents being created in the elevation, the addition being well named, would do credit in the city many times the size of Billings. Nearly all are being constructed along the bungalow style of architecture, with few exceptions. So Cohagen's home building period is primarily what I'm looking at is 1920 to 1940, coming a little later. So the North Elevation has some Cohagen properties, but the red dots up there indicate some of the homes that he built, in particular up in the North 32nd area up by 12th and Beverly Hill Boulevard. When I started out with this, I knew that he had done about 7 or 8, and I'm up to about 25. And I thought even presenting this program, if there's some neighbors here, we might be adding to that number. So that's an exceptional number of homes that are being built in the North Elevation by one architect. Okay, excuse me. As I mentioned, in the North Elevation, the bungalow style dominates the McKinley School neighborhood. So Chandler's father, a builder, John Cohagen, actually built several homes in Billings in the early 1900s. These bungalows have low pitched roof, wide porches, wide overhanging eaves, exposed rafters, tapered or square columns that are supporting the roof or porch. Many homeowners would later enclose these porches. They realized in Montana maybe that wasn't so great to have an open porch. Bungalows can be either front gabled, side gabled, or cross gabled. That's the pitch of the roof itself. They usually have a simple floor plan with no foyers or parlors, with limited hallways, lots of windows, simple wood trim, built-in cabinetry, and they maximize living space in minimum square footage. So unlike much of the American history of the last centuries, so this is a very common, obviously, house. The North Elevation Historic District is overwhelmingly represented by these early bungalow-type styled homes. 62 of the 104 contributing homes in the district are of the bungalow style. So again, a little early. Now he's going to be involved, and you're going to see how home building will also change. What's really cool, there's a cool fact about this. There's most things in like architecture and stuff in the United States seem to go east to west. The bungalow style actually has a little moment in the east, but then it's really picked up in Southern California, a part of the arts and crafts movement, and then it moves east. So, and we have that twice with some of the work that he does. So the bungalows kind of are, their origins are in Southern California and such. Okay, so one of the beautiful things about, I dread the day when we don't have good newspapers and reporting again, because it's wonderful because in 1926, 1936, 1940, we're able to get these long direct quotes from the architect themselves talking about their work, which we don't get very much. So this is from Cohagen talking about what he called the design for living, and this is focused on his homes. While the phrase seems modern, let the reader be reminded that the earliest known construction forms, those lake dwellings found at the bottom of Swiss lakes, consisted of huts erected on piles and built for protection. But as recently as our own American settlers, our homes were still being designed to resist invasion. Today's design for living applies not to the protection from our mortal enemies, but for the enjoyment of many devices invited for our own comfort. Although I will say, when my neighbor put up a big fence, I felt it was like a fortification. But again, this is what he believed about modern homes. This was actually written in 1940 at the tail end of this period of building for him. He said, everyone with any ambition has a desire to have individuality and a personality of his own. So it should be with our residences and our business blocks, even as well as our public buildings. He generally looked for warmer tones, natural colors, unique features such as quality flooring, and a balance between utility and beauty to highlight his homes. The homes were built in an array of styles, including Colonial Revival, Tudor Revival, and Spanish Mission Revival, which I'll give you examples of each of those. In terms of newer styles, he said, the home builder should look with disfavor upon extremes in design and construction, since the resale tomorrow may be materially affected by the very items which only seem to please today. The rapid change to a completely new style is no easier than a rapid change to a new method of living. So he was very much a traditionalist, but he was bringing in a lot of new styles at the time, but nothing too garish until he builds the governor's mansion in Helena. So highly regarded contractors, John Cohagen, his father, Frank Jacoby and Sons, Barry O'Leary, and Alfred Lyle served as builders on most of the home and business projects. As we're learning and researching these homes also, one thing that we did see in the architectural drawings is this distinguishing symbol on some of the homes, a varied backward S on the chimney. And in the original McIver and Cohagen drawings, these exist. He has those depicted. So these are two of the homes in North 32nd. The Morgan home, built in 1935, and the Pasco family residence on North 32nd have either stucco covered or brick chimney with this S-like embellishment. This actually is an anchor plate, has a practical use. It's a decorative metal piece designed to reinforce the brickwork and prevents bowing, often shaped like an S. It's commonly found on older homes. So it's possible that other people are using this anchor plate, but we just happen to have drawings that are showing these, and that's how we were able to kind of find out these homes. So these are some earlier homes I'll start with. This is a two-story American four-square. That's pretty easy to remember, right? You look at a house like this with a low-pitched hip roof with a widely overhanging eaves and a balanced presentation. This one has a beautiful carport. This is on 1010 North 32nd. The American four-square is usually a basically square. A two-story boxy design with 4 rooms in the upper and 4 rooms in the bottom. So beautiful homes. The owner of the home, Parker Wallace Hastings, was a civil engineer who came to Montana with his wife Naomi to work with the Security Bridge Company. This is a theme also. A lot of the people who hired Cohagen seemed to be engineers or other architects, or not architects, but engineers or builders or stonemasons. And this is very, very close to McKinley. And then with each of these homes, I'm just trying to show you, I think these are beautiful drawings. So these are the drawings that we had to match to each of these homes. So if the person who lives at 1010 North 32nd, they can come here and actually get a copy of their drawings that we here have in the collection. So. And that actually was a McIver, Marshall, and Cohagen project. This is actually considered his first independent contract, even though it was McIver and Cohagen. This is what he said was his first independent contract. This is a watercolor of the home on what was Avenue H at the time, but now 240 Avenue on Beverly Hill Boulevard. It shows the final build, designed by the firm of McIver and Cohagen. The 2-story, 8-room wood frame colonial revival was built for engineer and bridge builder Ray Murray and his family. Mr. Murray worked for a short time with the Security Bridge Company, another person in that neighborhood, also with Roscoe and Hewitt, which were bridge builders in this area, and later was responsible for building several bridges in the Puget Sound area of Washington State. So it's one of several prominent residences in that North 32nd, North 31st neighborhood, up into the tree streets and stuff like that, up in that area. So as I said, the home was originally listed as 240 Avenue H, became part of the city in 1934. It was renamed 240 Beverly Hill Boulevard. So you can see this drawing, but the house is slightly different. There's subtle differences. The colonial revival homes with a primary side gable mass or roof line with a 1-story side gable addition has the prominent brick on the end, which you don't see in the original drawings. The entry stoop is centered on the primary mass of the home as a small front gable with an accented front door, accentuated front door supported by slender columns. The original design did not include the adjacent pairs of windows in the side entrance garage or the massive chimney. Chandler Cohagen said the colonial or American style, English style or Tudor style, and Spanish styled homes will always be in good taste. So this is another example. This will help when we have the brochure, right? When you can walk around with the addresses and the map. So this is a 2-story American four-square on North 32nd at 1148. These are all within a block and a half of each other. So you can stand on one corner up on North 32nd in Beverly Hills and literally see at least 8 Cohagen houses right from the same vantage. So this was originally the home of Frank and Julia Adams. Adams was a dentist. The family lived in Montana and lived in the home until 1978. So these homes are being built, designed, and then the families are staying in these homes often for decades. Even the daughter actually ended up purchasing the home in 1978, so it stayed in the family. So the lower basement level is exposed at the downhill side of the slope lot. This is another trend in Cohagen's work, as he loved these uneven lots that would be difficult to build in, but he seemed to thrive. And several of the houses that I'm going to show you have that, they're built in like that. So here's a gorgeous drawing from our collections of that residence. And I learned a little bit about each person, but the Adams, each year during Christmas, they hosted holiday dinner parties, themed kids' luncheons, and an annual Christmas party of the Daughters of the American Revolution. This is one of his most distinctive homes up on North 32nd and Beverly Hills Boulevard. This elegant Tudor revival home of Alfred and Beth Lyle was designed in 1930. Lyle was a well-known contractor and builder and excelled in concrete construction. So even if you're walking by the house in the future, there's some amazing stonework in terms of the walls and things like that obviously Lyle participated in. The Tudor revival with what's a Cotswold or a storybook style from England has a front-place chimney and an amazing false thatched roof, mimicking the thatched roofs of Old England. So it's amazing. When you look at it, you can really see that too. I don't know if the photo does justice. The windows, typically ganged in groups of 2 or 3, are multi-like casement windows, which basically means they're attached to a window frame and they swing open using a crank handle that turns the window's supporting arm. And again, these drawings are almost worthy of just hanging up in your house, right? This is the drawings that he did for that Lyle home. Interesting side note, Lyle, they moved in, obviously, 1932, or 1930, but in 1932, at the age of 45, Alfred Lyle died at Deaconess Hospital, where he was confined when stricken with an attack of appendicitis, for which he had undergone an operation. Cohagen actually was the honorary pallbearer at his funeral. This is a trend with this house. Keith Edgerson's not here, is he? No, good. Seemed like every family moved in. The husband died at a relatively young age, so this is in the late 1930s then. Harry Jr. and Muriel Snyder moved into the house. These are also photos from our collections. The Snyder family lived in the home for 4 decades. Harry and Muriel hosted birthday parties, bridge tournaments, luncheons. Don't you love when you look back at the Gazette and newspapers in the 20s and 30s? You know exactly what people were doing, how they decorated their tables, what flowers they favored, and things like that. So it's the Facebook of the past, I suppose. But the home has 2 fireplaces and a spiral staircase leading to the 2nd floor under a concrete buttress dome. Harry's parents actually just lived a couple blocks away on North 30th. Harry Sr., his father, was director of the Snyder Sheep Company and president of the Montana Wool Growers Association for many years. The Snyder family operated a huge sheep ranch near Joliet. Harry Snyder Jr., the resident of the home, is also listed as a wool grower and worked with his father for several years until buying his own ranch, sheep ranch near Edgar. And then again, tragically, Harry Snyder died young in May of 1956 at the age of 47 from a Friday evening car accident near Warren. And the widow then would live in the house for like another 8 to 10 years. So the Murphy family moved in during the 1980s, only the 3rd family to live in the home since 1930. Keith Edgerton and Lynette Kosovich purchased the home in 2015, and where they presently live. And I'm hoping that when we do the walking tour, they don't mind that people are standing on their sidewalk and waving at them. So I want to just mention a little sidebar here. This is also the beginning of zoning. So in 1926, the U.S. Supreme Court upheld zoning regulations for the city planners of Euclid, Ohio. They argued that the regulations for zoning were fine without violating private property rights. So Montana state legislature in 1930 pushed through a new principal zoning law to help stabilize property values and provide for an orderly growth in our cities. The focus became on better planned neighborhoods, and the segregation of types of buildings, and to prevent the overcrowding of the land. Some of these things would come back and bite us in the butt, but at the time it seemed like a great idea. The regulations were spurred by property owners being concerned about the possibility of, quote, a gas station or industry being built in their neighborhood. In 1929, for example, Billings residents on North 34th were upset about a potential used car lot being built in their neighborhood. So Billings Zoning Commission also jumped on board in 1930 with a local plan that would have restrictions in District A, and you can kind of see where the neighborhoods we are. The north elevation still has the edge of the railroad plat going up, and we're kind of at that peak up there in those avenues. But the restrictions in A were that you couldn't have gas stations in the neighborhood, and you had to require a front yard with a depth of 30 feet setback with no more than 40 feet. The rear yard would have to be at least 20 feet from the alley. In District B, 75% of the neighbors would have to agree on a gas station, for example. So in this, most of the area in the northwest part of this town was in District A or B. The zoning ordinance would clearly be elastic, but some in the city were debating whether the dairy farm that was downtown, for example, should remain in the city, and actually the dairy farm would be sold, because people were like, maybe we shouldn't have a dairy farm in the middle of the urban downtown. I do like this, though. Neighbors were also concerned that the miniature golf or pee-wee golf course was staying open after midnight. And they felt maybe the zoning laws would restrict that, because apparently that is quite the party. Architectural critic James Kooistra would argue, especially after World War II, that zoning laws would actually keep residential areas and commercial districts separate, leading actually to the end of local neighborhood markets. So, you know, if you know the north elevation, there still are some of those markets, and they've been grandfathered in. But what zoning would do is separate in some ways. Kooistra thought that the strict separation of human activities would make it mandatory to drive everywhere, promoting what he called the privilege of the car, to get from one use, your home, to the other, your marketplace or your work. It would require immense areas of paved parking in order to make that successful. So we're in that time period now. Zoning is still coming in. The setbacks are now being required, and we're in the 1930s. So this is the Bonnell House, which is also at the top of 32nd and Beverly Hill. So where the Edgerton House is, or the Lyle House is, if you're standing on the corner of Beverly Hill and 32nd, you're looking just north at the Bonnell House. Back here is the Murray House, the First Commission. Across the street is the Fagg House, and then the Low House. They're all Cohagen projects, and I'll give you examples, the photos of all. So Mr. and Mrs. Roy Bonnell shared ideas with the architect Chandler Cohagen to fill this large corner lot. The site at the angular intersection of North 32nd and Avenue H, or Beverly Hill, and Colton Boulevard was featured in the 1949 Beautiful Homes article in the Billings Gazette. The home, it says, quote, contains 7 lots, a generous property, but impossible to have used efficiently with a conventional square house. But for the reason the plan is itself angular, fitted to the grounds handsomely and with the utmost economy of space. It's one of the few homes that I recognize with the help of Kate Hampton from the State Historic Preservation Office as French country or chateau-esque. And it was kind of forced to do that, I think, because of this weird kind of lot that it was on. So the home is asymmetrical with a steep pitched roof, multi-light casement windows, multiple dormers with unusual roof lines above the entry. If you look above the entry point, you can see that roof line kind of swoops down like that. A lot of unusual aspects to this home. Roy Bonnell was a salesman for the Rubberoid Company for about 40 years, which produced home asbestos siding and roof shingles. This is always one of the dangers of history. I'm sure they've removed them, so. So this gives you another look at that neighborhood. You can see, so we're looking south toward McKinley into the north elevation. This is that intersection at Beverly Hill and North 32nd. It was created, the Beverly Hill subdivision was created in 1938 by the North brothers, Joe and Odo. In 1938, Beverly Hill Boulevard had only 3 homes, including the Bonnell and Murray homes, as the street did not yet extend out to Virginia Lane. entrance to the new subdivision at the corner of North 32nd and Avenue H at present is a short street and is only faced by these 3 modern residences. The street will now be renamed Beverly Hill instead of Avenue H and be extended all the way to Virginia Lane. So this is really the beginning of the Tree Street developments then after 1936. Odo North, one of the developers, said, quote, "It was only about 3 years ago that the area north of Colton and in the Grandview addition, or the Tree Streets, was contained in wheat and alfalfa fields. Now numerous homes are being built and many others have been built and many others are in various stages of construction. The Grandview subdivision lots were sold by the North brothers and we're now contracting to start building sidewalks up in that area." So you can see as Billings is growing, obviously it's doing what every city does, start moving out of the urban area and into more of a suburban. This building is also, if you're standing on that corner, it's right also on the corner of North 32nd and 12th. It's actually now Locust Street. So there's a switch when you're going up North 32nd and it goes up, it turns from North 32nd into Locust as you're heading up toward the campus. This is the Merle and Frances Fagg residence at 1 Locust, one of the largest homes in Billings in 1936 when it was built. It was designed by Cohagen following the suggestions of Mrs. Fagg, Frances Fagg. The home, colonial revival in style, overlooked the city from its location on the northwest edge of Billings. The trees are great, but they block their view, apparently. A symmetrical facade with rectangular footprint has gable returns at the roof line. I have a little arrow there to show that. So these little distinctive markers. Actually has a unusual, I think, a second story kind of overhang in the front where it kind of pushes out. The colonial revivals were the most popular house design in the early decades of the 20th century. So the family still lives in the house. Today, Michael Burke and Cheryl Burke are from the Fagg lineage. They still live in the house, and they actually sent me this. The home featured oak floors throughout, floor-to-ceiling tile bathrooms, an award-winning wood-paneled den, was modeled after a den exhibit at the 1893 World's Fair, terrazzo finished basement floor, a call system between the kitchen and dining room, 5 walk-in clothes closets, a custom-built kitchen, a closed chute from the 3rd floor bedroom to the basement laundry. I always wonder if, like, kids do that jump down. 4 wood-burning fireplaces, 3 baths, 1 half bath, 5 bedrooms, a large living room, dining room, basement laundry, recreation, and a large landscaped yard. And I did want to talk about the families. Again, these people are connected. They're hiring each other. They know each other. They're playing bridge together. I mean, this neighborhood seems very bonded. Proximity made a difference for these folks, you know. And I just wanted to mention Merle Fagg, who was the Billings postmaster, when he died at age 53 in July of 1952 from a heart attack. His surprise early death and accomplishments actually weren't just noted in Billings. They were noted throughout Montana. So he served the Kiwanis Club, Easter Seals, Billings Chamber, was national chair of the Young Democrats in 1934, and a major advocate for the YMCA. And there's references throughout the state of his work in these service groups. The Times-Clarion of Harlowton said, quote, "He was a great public-spirited citizen of Montana." Frances Fagg, the wife of Merle, started as a professional solo harpist and continued to live in the house until her passing in 1993. The harp is still in the house, so I don't know if Cheryl Burke plays it. She's not here, so she can't answer for herself. The son of Merle and Frances was Harrison Fagg, another architect, who was the architect of the Sheridan Hotel. At the time it was built, it was not only the tallest freestanding brick building in the United States, but the tallest building in Montana until the construction of the first interstate tower. So these are pretty grand homes, all of these, right? But a lot of the properties that Chandler Cohagen was building are much more modest, because you think about the time period, the 1930s, Montana had dry years starting in 1919, 1920s, half of our banks closed, 1930s, the economic depression in the United States, so you had to figure out a way if you were going to continue to build homes, and one of the ways that they did it is through FHA, Federal Housing Administration loans that were guaranteed. And a lot of smaller homes were built in the 1930s. This is a minimal traditional style house built in 1940, again on a corner lot with a slope, so we had to kind of design it in a very unique fashion. Single-story dwelling with a wood frame clad with a simple drop steel siding. It has a low-pitched roof, original windows, according to Kate Hampton Chateau-esque multi-light casement windows, so little elements that made it a little more unique than maybe the person next door. Set on a concrete foundation, it has a full-light basement. Another example, as I mentioned, of Cohagen building into a sloping lot. So Connie Lowe and their 2-year-old daughter lived with relatives in Glendive just after the house was built for more than 3 years, while William enlisted during World War II to serve overseas as a naval combat engineer. These cost-effective smaller homes were practical during the Great Depression, as potential homeowners could get home-insured loans from the Federal Housing Administration. And this minimal traditional style, and I actually live in a minimal traditional, and when I first heard that, I was like a little disappointed. I was like, really? That doesn't sound that great, Like, how about colonial revival? So this minimal traditional style became very popular in the 1930s during the Depression, and was the dominant style of home building in the 1940s and 50s, until being replaced by the ranch-style homes. The minimal traditional styled homes were often inspired by energy conservation considerations and were considered affordable and an efficient style during the Depression and shortly after the war. So during the 1930s, Cohagen was also selling model homes to try to get affordable housing into the market. And so this is an example. He's promoting an English type or Tudor revival home. The Tudor revivals were the dominant style of domestic building used for a large proportion of the earliest 20th century suburban homes throughout the country, was particularly fashionable during the 1920s and 1930s, when only the colonial revival rivaled it in popularity or as a style. So these homes are loosely based on like a variety of late medieval century prototypes. And this is, so that home, sorry about that. The home that's advertised still does exist. The other model home, which is on North 28, is gone. So this is the 1935 home of newlyweds Betty Binky McCormick of Hysham and Arthur Klein. This is one of the model homes that was sold at that time. This home still exists. It's the Billings Clinics Community Relations property. And it's a Tudor revival, but it's very restrained. It doesn't have a lot of ornamentation. It's very simplified in terms of what you might have seen during the 1920s with Tudor revival. And again, because of affordability. So they were building affordable housing in Billings in the 1930s. So, and here's some examples of more extravagant Tudor revivals. This is actually Chandler Cohagen's own home on Park Hill Drive at 235 Park Hill. So you come off of North 32nd, you get up Park Hill, which is at the top of Pioneer Park, and there's a whole series of Cohagen homes there. He started again with a large triangular lot. He built his own family home. According to the 1949 City of Beautiful Homes article in the Gazette, it is a striking example of hillside construction. The house grows out of the hillside like a great half-buried rock. The home of a man whose life and work are all but inseparable, and of a woman with whom no consideration has been overlooked. So as I mentioned, it's a 1/2-story Tudor with a large sloping site, extensive walkout basement, half-story windows face the back. The house has a primary rectangular mass with a hip roof and a hip roof wing, with an entry at the west end and a side gabled mass over the double end. So the walls are primarily brick, and it's a beautiful home. Let me see if I have a modern photo. Okay, so you might recognize that. The eastern third of the house was actually transformed by a two-story addition and garage. It looks like about 1980, but the addition was done very sympathetically. So you can kind of, if you go back to that 1949 article, you can see where the house ends, and then there was the addition to add the garage. And it's right along the alleyway. So, and the house that's just above that, right there with the arrow, is the Edmund Ryan house, another Tudor revival, which is also a Cohagen. So as I mentioned, if Cohagen stood on the chimney here, he could see at least 15 of his houses from that vantage point. You know, the backyard was his first commission on Beverly Hills, and then all of those other houses I've just shared with you. Here's another English type or Tudor styled home. Was built in the 1920s by Cohagen for Frederick and Lottie Krieg. Krieg was a real estate agent who sold agricultural lands in Montana, was on the executive committee of the farmland section for the National Real Estate Board. This is an interesting facet of this building too. And all of these older buildings, they separated the entertainment area from the bedrooms and the bath. So this becomes a problem because he said by 1990, his parents couldn't make it up the stairs to go to the bathroom. And so that's still the case in a lot of these buildings. They were built to separate kind of the entertainment area where you would come in to the dining room or the living room, and you'd have to go upstairs up by the bathroom to go to the bathroom by the bedroom. So another beautiful drawing from 1929. This is a family photo from Gerald Krieg showing the house and showing the interior of him with his parents by the fireplace. And again, during the 1930s, he was selling other model homes. He promoted what he called the Spanish Villa model, like the English type model homes of the 30s. Applications for the Federal Housing Administration insured loans kept home building operating during the Depression. So these were very straightforward, simple. There's a lot of these around Pioneer Park too, but I don't know which ones are Cohagen or not. I'm only presenting the ones that I do know for the most part. According to Montana art historian Rafael Chacon, popular shortly after the turn of the century until World War II, the Spanish style evoked the architecture of the Spanish colonies in North America, particularly those in California and the Southwest. For example, Spanish-styled railroad depots became popular in the early 20th century, the Gallatin Gateway Inn near Bozeman, the Milwaukee Depot in Missoula, resorts like the Symes Hotel in Hot Springs, the Boulder Hot Springs in Boulder, and the Yucca Theater in Hysham have these mission-styled elements, so they're built about the same time period. And again, another cool thing is that this is another form of architecture that's coming from the West and moving east. So, you know, we think of this style of architecture as associated with places like Florida now, but it's coming from the Southwest in Southern California, and then it's shifting up into this part of the country. So this is an example of a larger home he built at the top on Park Hill, right above Pioneer Park. This is the Percy and Annabelle Goen family, who actually ran the first Chevrolet dealership in town, Dude Rancher Hotel. As I said, these types of homes were most commonly found in California, Arizona, Texas, and Florida. So what's also fun, yeah, you know the Goen family there. So the Everett Terrell actually worked for Chandler Cohagen from 1933 to 1938 when these Spanish-style homes were being built. And what's interesting is when he left to join Ralph Cushing, he actually built a beautiful Spanish-style home on Virginia Lane that has that tower. I always thought it was a Cohagen, but actually the homeowners found the drawings with Everett Terrell's. So Terrell may have been influenced in creating some of these Spanish-style homes too. Let's see. This is a drawing from again, there's combining stucco walls, terracotta glazed roof tiles, ganged windows, heavy wooden doors, bracketed porches, low-pitched roof, low parapets at the roof line, and the use of wrought iron. The living room and bedrooms have beam ceilings. They lead to a ramada or an area which is kind of an outdoor picnic area. And this is kind of where a lot of these homes are. So this is Pioneer Park in 1940. Number 3 is the Goen residence, which is that mission style. The Fag residence, which is that big colonial revival, is number 2 up on North 32nd. And then the Murray residence, his first independent commission, another colonial revival. At the same year the Goen House was being built at the top of Pioneer Park, the Mission Revival, they were also building the Gullard home, which is on the corner of Virginia and Polly. And in this photo, you can see how low the wall is, but I think the automobile forced them to build a wall that's about 8 feet tall. Even that hasn't helped them. I know they've had at least 3 cars crash into their walls there. So that was built at the same year as the Goen. So Cohagen was really busy with these properties. There, as I mentioned, there are several others in the neighborhood, but I don't know for certain whether they are, Terrell from CTA or whether they're Cohagen. So, and this is a drawing that was in there and shows kind of the Grandview neighborhood over by Virginia Lane and Polly. And the building is somewhat squat. And Kate Hampton from the State Historic Preservation Office said it's almost becoming like a proto-ranch. We're moving to those single-level homes. Even though it has that Spanish ornamentation, it's not clear. So I did want to add this building, which I do not know if it is a Cohagen, but I want it to be. So this is the Frank Jacoby house, which is right next to the Bonnell house, which is right across from the ranch, the Fag family house. This is the home of the architect Dennis Detmeyer today. I'm assuming he bought it because it was a Cohagen, but, and this is a Mission Revival, also has those elements to it. And that's the thing about this research. It will continue to go on, and we will collect more definitive information on some that we think are Cohagens. But what we have now are definitively at least 25 known homes in this neighborhood. So in 1940, we're in the home stretch here. Cohagen noted the impact of the automobile on home building. And this is fascinating to me because I've always known this information from the architectural critic James Kunstler, writing in the 1990s. Here's somebody in 1940 saying exactly the same thing, and a person actually involved in these kind of buildings and neighborhoods. He noted that modern designs are reducing and even eliminating the front porch, as neighbors no longer walk through their neighborhoods. As the car extends outreach to our friends, our knowledge of our neighbors lessens, and our preference at home now leans toward privacy. The living room is moving toward the back of the home, and family gatherings are moving to the back of the house, providing more privacy. Homeowners in 1940 wanted to build a view of their own in a private backyard with secluded gardens. Most significantly, he said garages are now advancing to the street and providing a door directly into the home. In some case, the garage has even advanced to the front of the house. He even said there's no way it'll go further. And of course, if you're on the West End, there are houses where you can't even find the front door because the garage has come out all the way, and you never have to ever see your neighbors. So he's saying, look at the impact of the automobile in 1940. He also noted the separation of sleeping quarters in the bathroom from the entertainment areas, but in 1940 he observed that the importance of the dining room was now being diminished, that entertainment area with your neighbors. In modern houses, the kitchens were moving close to the front door, becoming the nerve center of the house. The building is now more considerate of climatic conditions, and a cold climate demands fewer open spaces on the floor plans. The bedrooms are trending to more modest spaces for dressers, convenient closets, and necessary furniture. Children's bedrooms are now doubling as a study. The bedrooms are getting larger, and clients were adding bathrooms, sometimes with a separate standing shower. Can you imagine? Increasing automobile storage, air conditioning, better insulation, laundry rooms, modern ranges, and refrigerators, improved wiring and plumbing were becoming standard in all homes. Homes, he said, will be continued to be designed for living, but the kind that means more convenience and more comfort. So probably his most famous home is the governor's mansion in Helena, which has had a lot of bad press, it seems, initially. So initially, the governor's mansion were left to secure their own home, but in 1913, the state purchased a beautiful Queen Anne style mansion that was built in 1888 to house the governor. And in 1953, the state hired Chandler Cohagen to create the new governor's mansion. He produced a home featuring extensive use of glass, native building materials, and an open floor plan suitable for state functions. Throughout the construction process, the project remained controversial because of its cost as well as its contemporary aesthetic. So we went from the 1940s and now we're in 1959. You can see what a massive change is going on in terms of architecture. Funding issues delayed the home's construction for 6 years. Forced alterations changed the original design. This is a mid-century modern. It has flat geometric planes and a curtain wall of windows. It has the elements of kind of a ranch-style house. The deep overhangs built on a hill with a grand entry and a reception area. So the home was built to welcome guests to Montana to come in the house. So it has very open spaces when you first walk in. The west elevation has a view to the Sleeping Giant and the Helena Valley. There's a privacy wall for the family and a yard. Governor Steve Bullock was the last governor to actually live there. Interestingly, Cohagen's most famous home design, the governor's mansion, was a disappointment even for him, because he said the Montana State Legislature Committee utterly, quote, utterly changed his original plans and pushed for the mansion to, quote, resemble a large ship. So in 1968, ironically, he said he avoided home building because there were just too many bosses, which is funny because here I'm doing a whole program on his home building, but he said, you've got the people you're doing it for, their friends, their relatives, and they all have suggestions of what should and what shouldn't be done. Michael Burke, an architect in town, said, you know what, how old was he? And I said, he was about 80. He said, you know what, he was just tired. He doesn't want people like telling him what to do at that point. So his wife actually died in 1958. They had no children, and he would die in 1985. But I just wanted to mention one thing. They had no children. I don't think in all my research I have ever seen a person so engaged in their community as Chandler Cohagen. I mean, it's incredible. I don't know if he ever slept or anything, but like the head of the, with the YMCA, served the Billings City Council, leader and president of the local Y for 30 years, key member of the Billings Rotary, Grand Master of the Masonic Lodge Masons, member of the Billings Heights Kiwanis, charter member of the Albadoo Shrine Temple, organizer of the local order of D. Molay, national leader of the D. Molay, served on the board of Rocky Mountain College, Sunday school superintendent of First Christian Church, member of the Central Christian Church, member of the local Red Cross, president of the state architectural board, amateur photographer, local volleyball and baseball player, and that is about half. I couldn't put all of it, so that's a little brief introduction, and this is what he had on his wall in his office. This is a quote from John Ruskin in his office. It says, "When we build, let us think that we build forever. Let it not be for the present delight, nor for its present use alone. Let it be such work as our descendants will thank us for. And let us think, when we lay stone upon stone, that a time will come when those stones will be held sacred because our hands have touched them. And that men will say, as they look upon the labor and wrought substance of these projects, see, this is what our Father did for us." Thank you. Oh, my buzzer. I went 5 minutes over on my buzzer. I could feel it vibrating the whole time. So, anyway, does anybody have any questions? Yes?
When you're talking about codes, I know I had lived in tree houses, and
Right.
it did say, we had the original, and it said no Negroes, no Native Americans, no, they had a whole
Oh,
list.
interesting.
And I know that that north elevation, that was all like the business owners, the school
Yeah.
teachers, the people, I don't know, the hospital, codes can be good. But,
Yes, and, yeah.
But like that, I think they were, and I know that athletic pool was whites only.
Right. And we do a program on the south side even, and the pool was segregated until the 1950s. So yes, codes can be used in a terrible way, obviously. I'd like to see your stuff on that too, so. Okay, anybody, yes?
Kevin, you mentioned a dairy in town and also a miniature golf.
Yes.
Where were those located?
If you look at aerial maps or photographs of Billings, I think in 1926, you can see them in the downtown, those miniature golf. But I don't know if they were up in the neighborhoods, that's what struck me. But there's at least 2 mini golf courses right in the downtown here. So instead of going to the bar, you went and played mini golf at midnight. Sounds like fun, doesn't it?
How about the dairy?
The dairy farm was sold right after that controversy, right after 1930, so I don't remember the name of it offhand. So, okay, well, thank you so much for your attention. Oh, yes, go ahead.
Just a point, the Lohoff Brothers Concrete poured all of the sidewalks in the trees.
I will get the Lohoff family in this program. Thank you. When you're a member of the Western Heritage Center, you just ask, okay? Good, thank you so much. Thank you, and I hope you enjoy your day and Thanksgiving. Thanks.